So, what happens when a huge modern social movement crashes into thousands of years of tradition? Today, we're diving into the really complex and, let's be honest, often messy relationship between feminism and faith. We're going to see what happens when the fight for gender equality comes face to face with organized religion. This quote, wow, it's from the feminist theologian Mary Daly, and it just gets right to the heart of the whole conflict. For a lot of feminists, especially during the second wave, traditional religions weren't just neutral. With their male prophets, male priests, and a god almost always called he, they looked a lot like institutions that were actively propping up patriarchy. And that critique posed a massive challenge. So this brings us to our big question for today. When you're faced with a critique that powerful, what do you do if you're a feminist who also has faith? Do you walk away? Do you stay and try to change things from the inside? Or is there some other much harder path you have to walk? While the answers are as varied as the women asking the questions. And from that tangle, you can really see three main paths taking shape. The first is about just starting over, building something completely new. The second is all about reforming ancient traditions from within. And the third, well, that's the day-to-day grind of activism in places where faith and culture are all tangled up together. Let's take a look at each one. Okay, our first pathway. This one starts with women who looked at patriarchal religions and basically said, you know what, this is a teardown, not a renovation. Instead of trying to fix them, they chose to build something brand new. And that sparked the feminist spirituality movement back in the 1970s. The whole philosophy behind this is really interesting. It lines up with something called difference feminism. See, while equality feminism is about getting an equal seat at the table that already exists, difference feminism asks, hey, what if this table is the problem? It's about celebrating what's unique about being female and creating new spiritual ideas that aren't patriarchal from the ground up. And that line of thinking led straight to the goddess movement, which is a complete break from traditional religion. The divine isn't some distant father figure up in the sky. Instead, you have a radically immanent goddess. That just means she is right here, right now, in the earth and inside us. The earth is literally her body. Women connect to her through their own bodies. She's all about change, cycles, empowerment. It was a total paradigm shift. And you gotta understand, for these feminists, spirituality was deeply political. This quote from an early Wiccan coven says it all. They believed that this spiritual work wasn't just for them. It was the fuel they needed to fight the feminist revolution. To change the world, they had to first reclaim their own spiritual power. All right, now for pathway number 2. What about the people who didn't want to leave their faith? This path explores that intense intellectual struggle to change a deeply traditional religion from the inside. We're going to look at a really fascinating debate within Orthodox Judaism. So if path 1 was leaving the building, this one is about trying to renovate it while you're still living in it. This whole debate was laid out in the Edda Journal, and it centered around the work of Professor Tamar Ross. She basically argued that the gap between what women could do in their everyday lives and what they could do in their religious lives had become a full-blown crisis for Orthodox Judaism. This wasn't just about small rules. It was shaking the very foundation of the faith. So what was her solution? It's a pretty mind-bending concept called cumulative revelation. The idea is that God's revelation wasn't a one-time event that happened at Mount Sinai and then just stopped. Nope. It's an ongoing process. Sinai was the start, but the community continues to receive revelation by rereading its traditions with new moral knowledge, like, for instance, feminism. And here is the core of her argument. She says that even a sacred text, one revealed by God, is still a product of the culture it was written in. And since those cultures were patriarchal, the texts reflect that. So, by understanding their historical context, we can say, okay, that's how God was understood then, but our revelation today can create a new, more equal religious language. Now, this is a radical idea, right? And it immediately sparked a huge pushback. Because if revelation is always changing, if it just depends on what the community thinks is moral at the time, well, what's stopping the whole thing from just floating away? Are you risking the very foundation of your faith? Scholar Joel Finkelman put that fear into words perfectly. In his response to Ross, he basically said, hang on, if any new idea, feminism today, something else tomorrow, can just be called revelation, then the word loses all its power. What stops someone from saying their horrible idea is the new revelation? If your theology can't say no to anything, it can't really say yes to anything either. So at the end of the day, Finkelman's great fear is that this path of reform costs way too much. He worries that you end up trading the raw vitality of a traditional faith, the power, the mystery, for a kind of bland, watered-down religion that just mirrors whatever is popular at the moment. It really highlights how high the stakes are when you try to change a faith from within. So that brings us to our third pathway, which takes us out of these heady theological debates and drops us right onto the front lines of activism. For this, we're going to look at the real-world experiences of feminists in Pakistan, a society where trying to balance faith, culture, and equality is a constant daily battle. Now, in Pakistan, feminism isn't just one single movement. You've got Islamic feminists on one side who work within their faith, arguing for equality by reinterpreting the Quran. But then you also have radical feminists who critique patriarchy everywhere, including in religion. And that often gets them branded as un-Islamic or as puppets for the West, which creates this really deep, difficult divide. And the barriers these women are up against are just huge. And it's not just political. The fight becomes incredibly personal. We're talking about intense pressure from your own family, being stigmatized by your community, and carrying this constant fear that you're going to bring shame and dishonor to the people you love. It takes incredible courage to be an activist in that environment. In a climate like that, social media has become an absolute lifeline. It's one of the few places where activists can actually speak out, organize, and find each other, building a community that they just couldn't find offline. But, as you can probably guess, this digital space is also a new battlefield. And the backlash is terrifyingly real. A case study looked at just 15 feminist activists in Islamabad. 15. And look at these numbers. 10 of them received direct, threatening messages. 8 of them were buried under derogatory comments. 7 dealt with constant cyberbullying. This isn't just people disagreeing online. This is a coordinated effort to harass them into silence. This is why this kind of academic work, published in journals like this one, is so important. It gives us a real, data-driven look at the incredible risks these women are taking every single day just to fight for their rights. So, after going down these 3 really different roads, creating something new, reforming the old, and fighting on the ground, what's the big takeaway? Well, it's that there is no one simple answer to how feminism and faith fit together. It's complicated. We've seen 3 totally distinct ways of dealing with the exact same challenge. Some people choose to create, to build something new from scratch. Others dig in their heels and do the hard work of internal reform. And so many others have to navigate the messy, dangerous reality of activism in their own communities every single day. If there's one thing that's crystal clear, it's that this is not a settled debate. There's no winner or loser. It's a living, dynamic conversation that's happening all over the world. And it's playing out through acts of spiritual creation, tough theological arguments, and just pure, courageous resistance. And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. As our societies keep changing, which one of these paths do you think is going to shape the future of faith the most? Will it be the brand new spiritualities, the old traditions that successfully change from within, or will it be the slow, hard-won victories of activists on the ground? The truth is, that story is still being written.